Orangutans are considered non-human people in Argentina, where an orangutan by the name of Laura has been released out of a zoo and into a sanctuary. Now, according to Reuters, animal rights campaigners filed a habeas corpus petition, a document more typically used to challenge the legality of a person's detention or imprisonment, in November on behalf of, her name's Sandra, I apologize, a 29-year-old Sumatran orangutan at the Buenos Aires Zoo. Okay, in a landmark ruling, that could pave the way for more lawsuits. The Association of Officials and Lawyers for Animal Rights argued that the ape had sufficient cognitive functions and should not be treated as an object. So that was the reasoning behind it. Orangutans are intelligent, they understand things, they shouldn't be locked up in a zoo, they should be released into a sanctuary, which is what happened with this orangutan. Now, I should also note that she was originally born in captivity in Germany, and then she ended up at a zoo in Buenos Aires. But it's just interesting because when these stories come up, there seems to be like a lot of arbitrary stuff going on, right? So like, how do you determine if an animal is smart enough? Is it really worth it to have zoos in the first place? You know what I mean? It brings up a lot of ethical questions.
And before we tackle those, and we're going to Supreme Court on whether Sandra is a person or not. Let's all know, like, first, everybody's making fun of that, or a lot of people are making fun of the Argentinians. Like, a non-human person. What does that mean, these silly Argentinians?
Well, we got that issue here.
Here in America, we have non-human persons called corporations, and they've taken over our government completely. And we have presidential candidates like Mitt Romney saying, corporations are people, my friend, right? Believe me, that's 1,000 times more absurd, 1,000,000 times more absurd. Not only are they considered, how could a corporation be a person? How could it be? They're considered a person, but they have all the rights of people. Plus they have the rights of corporations, plus they completely control our government now.
Right.
So at least orangutans don't run the Argentinian government.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, if there were two buttons in front of me and someone said you have to push one of the buttons, one of them says either an orangutan is a person or a corporation is a person, I'm going to go ahead and pick the orangutan because the orangutan's not going to destroy a democratic process, right?
As far as we know, until of course they take over the planet. Hello. Okay, I see you coming, orangutans. All right, now, are they actually people? Let's drop it. Justice Kasparian, I sense some skepticism from you.
Well, I think that the wording that the court used in this case was problematic because I don't think that they intended to say that an orangutan is the equivalent of a person. They're just trying to make a point that orangutans have the intelligence, enough intelligence for them to understand a situation that they're in, right? So it's better for them to be in a sanctuary as opposed to a zoo where they're in captivity and miserable.
Right, so do you agree with the court?
Yes, I agree with the court's decision.
Right, the problem is where you draw the line, right? Because I'm slightly torn about this. Of course they're not people, and of course Anna's right, that's not really what they mean by that. The question is, are they substantially different than a chimpanzee? And how do you make that finding? And there's a good argument to be, I've always been uncomfortable with zoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a good argument to be made, like we shouldn't put them in little cages where they obviously aren't, supposed to be. That's not their natural habitat. I mean, I make the slightest concessions in my otherwise, normal existence that follows no rules, and I'm not a good guy, and I'm not saving the earth or anything like that. But I don't eat veal because we keep them in little boxes and basically torture them their whole lives. And I buy, organic chicken hoping that they're actually cage-free, even though we don't really know, right? So I don't like the idea of stuffing animals into little boxes.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with zoos is that a lot of times, oftentimes, they're there for human entertainment, right? And so if you're gonna mistreat animals or take them out of their natural habitat for things like entertainment, I agree, I have the same feelings about circuses as well, then I'm against it, right? If you wanna make an argument that zoos help these animals and they, do a really good effort in trying to prevent them from being endangered or extinct, well then why don't you have wildlife reserves? Like, there's really no reason for you to put them in a zoo if you ask me.
I kind of like it's a funny example, but what Great Adventures does in New Jersey, where they have a safari portion of the park where you drive through, and at least the lions and Sandra have a little bit of running space. I mean, they sleep 20 hours a day, so don't do a lot of running, but at least they got a little bit of land. And I know that the defenders of zoos will say they care deeply about the animals, but overall, I'm with the Argentinian court too.
Yeah.
Let them go. Let Sandy go. Declare a person if you have to. JR, well-known opponent of animals. What say you?
Well, I don't think it's necessary to call it a human to give it some rights, you know? So, I mean, maybe they're doing that to go nuclear and be like, well, what would you do if it was a human that's in captivity like this? So, I mean, of course, yeah, I'm voting against it being called human. Come on. But you can still give it some rights.
To be slightly more accurate, it is a non-human person.
What does
that's
that
what they call
mean?
it, a non-human person.
Okay, I don't know. Their wording is
I
super
know they
strange.
should just and here, if the court wants to give corporations any extra rights, they should say that they have some constitutional rights instead of saying human rights or calling them humans or people, right? Which sounds absurd, right? Anyway. Yeah.
Maybe it gets caught up in the translation. Because it's not Rio. It's Buenos Aires.
Yeah, Argentina.
Maybe there's some kind of translation change with the non-human.
Yeah, you're still voting no. I know where you're coming. Jared's never voted for an animal in his life. Mike Shekels.
I vote for their freedom, though. Honestly, I think zoos, I've been to a couple of them, and maybe there should be a different creation of the zoos. Like, they're kind of like a wild area, but then where humans are still kind of detached from them. So maybe they're huge plots, wherever, and maybe there's not one in every major city because there's no room for them in major cities. They're in big, wide open areas, which are particular to whatever animal's environment. So if you want to see particular animals that aren't usually living in this city or this country, you can't see them till you go to the other country. It's like a big draw to go, maybe
Yeah,
it's
go to
in
the
our
countryside. It's
and then you're still maybe protected and not behind a glass, and they're not behind a glass wall.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. New justice in the court, Justice Shekels. What say you?
I think we need to reevaluate intelligence on all species because we just started learning about the brain and we really have no fucking idea how it works. If corporations are people, when you said that, you sold me. Earthworms are fucking people then. Case closed.
Okay. So we're pretty much in agreement. Supreme Court says, let them go! Let the orangutan go. And if it turns out we come back later and they've taken over the planet, well, we've made a terrible mistake.